Gale, and congratulations to the Honourable Aide from Walthamstow as a friend, and congratulate her on the new arrival. The importance of the issue in the eyes of our constituents, mine included, is obviously reflected in the fact that over 113,000 people have signed this e-petition, calling for an independent review of childcare funding and affordability as set out. I won't repeat. The public, I think, feel we could do more to create a sustainable future for the early years sector, which I represent here today as chair of the all-party group on childcare, as aforementioned, and early education. Now, of course, we in the group have spoken for some time about what I describe as a market failure in this sector and the need for a meaningful review of it. So it is good. And prior to the summer, I had the pleasure of speaking in another debate on the issue in Westminster Hall in its other incarnation. They come around often, these debates. And in the months since I spoke in that, things have moved on. The Chancellor has obviously now announced his comprehensive spending review alongside his budget on the 27th of October. And it was very useful to speak to him last week. I was in the meeting too with my right honourable friend from Chipping Barnet about many of the issues we're debating this afternoon. And from the outset, as I did to the Chancellor, I must stress this is not all about money, Mr Gale. It is about, for me, getting back to brass tacks to make our early years funding system work for the children of this country and the families who rely on it and the economy who relies on those families. It's about ensuring that our hard-working early years educators, I declare my interest, I'm married to one, are rewarded. And most importantly of all, it's about putting our early years sector on a sustainable footing so that this debate won't keep coming around again and again and again. So yes, I'm here as the chair of the all-party group, but I'm also a government MP, and I'm very proud of the landmark commitment that we as a party made through the 30 hours entitlement. However, I have to say, through my work chairing the group, it's become clear to me that systemic reforms are needed to make this flagship policy work better. Data from the National Day Nurseries Association, who are one of the sponsors of our group, showed in 2019-20, 3/4 of councils underspent their early years funding by £62 million. Now, meanwhile, there's a funding shortfall of almost £3,000 per child per year for every 30 hours placed. My hope is that government will agree to use the forthcoming spending review to fund an early years catch-up premium and address this shortfall, including facing down the local authorities on the underspend. I think merely by overhauling the system and tackling the existing underspend, we could fund many of those 30 hours places for children properly right across the country. And I think this is just one example, Mr Gale, of how renewing the funding system will ensure that the existing funding follows the child and is best used. For me, the two issues are intrinsically linked. We cannot fund our early years sector without holding a fundamental review of the funding system. And we cannot simply wait for a review of that system to report without some sort of bridging measures and the long-term certainty that my right honourable friend next to me spoke about. Between April 2020, let's just hang on this, and March 2021, there was a 35% increase in nursery closures, and just at the time when parents, who are key workers, needed them most. So I think that is a grave concern for us, Mr Gale. The nurseries that are struggling and closing tend to have a higher proportion of government-funded children, so therefore the poorer families suffer more from the shortfall between the funding and the delivery costs, which is causing the lag, which is causing the closures. The future of the sector is in peril, and with it the benefits that it brings to children, to their families, and of course to the economy. And it's not just about the bottom line for providers, but rather about the future and the development of our children, who then are ready to go on to reception year and to their primary and their secondary education. Final word about these early years educators. Yes.
I'm very grateful to the Honourable Gentleman, Sir Roger, and he's making a very powerful case, as have other speakers. Will he agree with me, though, that very often grandparents have to step into the breach and provide the childcare that is necessary? And while that's very welcome and they do it willingly, in terms of child development, it means you get an uneven pattern of child development.
Well, I think the Honourable Gentleman's point goes to the heart of this. I talked about early years educators. These are not well-meaning amateurs at the end of their career who are just providing plasticine. They are educators. and they are preparing children ready for the world of learning when they go into their primary and then their secondary education. It's a very good point, and it's well made. So just a final comment on these early years educators. Nursery settings, as we've heard, have remained open and ready to receive children and help their families in getting back to work. At the same time, their staffing costs have risen on average by 8.6%, including new national living wage and pension contributions. So with the reintroduction of business rates looming, the average nursery is facing a bill of about £12,500 for these alone. Surely it would be better used to see this money going into the pockets of our early years educators and directly invested in the future of children across the UK. I think that would be a fitting way of recognising the unsung contribution of early years educators over the last year and help develop our country's most valuable asset, the next generation. Thank you very much.